it was painful. It was painful just dragging this story out over so many books. Hello, welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to do my 5 most disappointing books so far this year. We're 6 months in, I've read 43 books, and these are the 5 that just didn't work so well for me. I will say most of them are still good books. I haven't had any DNFs this year, so most of them are still good books, but they just didn't quite, in most cases, live up to the expectations. And maybe, in some cases, my expectations were too high, which is why they fall here. Maybe they won't be here at the end of the year, but for now, these are the 5 most disappointing. And I'll start with my most disappointing and then go to my 5th most disappointing. So we will start with the worst book of the year so far. If you appreciate this video and appreciate these comments, please do like, subscribe and comment down below what you think of these books if you've read them. But let's crack on. So my most disappointing book of the year is Labrador by Ben Fogle. I think this was the 1st or 2nd book I finished in the year. And the reason I read it is I love dogs. I love Labradors especially. I have a black Labrador. If you watch till the end, you'll see a nice picture of her in the credits. And I love finding out dogs. They are fantastic companion animals. They have incredible abilities and skills. And let's put it out there, they are much better than cats. I'm just going to say it as it is. Watch the hate come in the comments down below. Anyway, so this book had some of the elements I wanted. It had a bit about the dogs, where the Labrador, specifically the breed, comes from, and its heritage and history, which is really interesting. And it did talk about some of the incredible things that animals can do, and these Labradors can do, specifically around, their incredible sense of smell and using them as detection dogs. Their use in the military, their use in the police force, their use in various fields. Their retrieving capability is exceptional. They're incredible swimmers. There's so much about them that I enjoyed. The bits that drove me nuts about this book, and the reason it's the worst book I've read so far this year, is there was way too much about the author himself. There was way too much about Ben Fogle, and I did not care. I didn't care. I didn't want to read this book to find out about Ben Fogle and his life. I wanted to find out about Labradors and the dogs, and there was way too many anecdotes about his life, and a lot of it was around his relationship with the dog, which was fine, but a lot of it was just anecdotes of people he'd met and whatever nonsense, and maybe his dog happened to be there at the same time, but it was too much. It was too much, and this is why it's down here. I struggled through it. The bits I enjoyed, the information it gave me about dogs was good, but the constant going on about his life was just... If I'd wanted to read about Ben Fogle, I'd have bought a book about Ben Fogle. And I will say, if you're of whatever audience that loves Labradors and is really interested in Ben Fogle, this is the book for you. Yeah, if you're only interested in one of them, this is not the book for you. So that is the worst book of the year. So the second worst book of the year, I haven't got a physical copy because I listened to it on audio, and it is Echoes of Eternity by Demski-Bowden, sorry. And this is the 7th book in the Siege of Terror series, which is part of a longer Horus Heresy series, which is part of the Warhammer 40k universe. The reason this book was so disappointing is that they are just dragging this story out over so many books. It's getting painful. As I say, this is 7th in the series, and there's 2 more to come. The first one I think is already out. I'm going to wait till the next one comes out. The problem is I'm a completionist, so I will listen to them, but this is effectively, you had the God Emperor of Mankind created through genetic manipulation, 20 sons of immense superhuman abilities, and then they have their armies of space marines or superhuman warriors. One of their sons rebelled against the Emperor, so he's Horus, the one that rebelled, and he's taken half the sons and armies with him to rebel, and he's known as the traitor, etc. And now they've been taken back over the galaxy, which was one for humanity, and they are now within the solar system and about to attacking Terra and trying to kill the Emperor from that. And the bits that are good is some of the action is so good. In the whole series, some of the action is exceptional. If you love fast-paced action, these books have got some of it. The other parts of this book are just dragging out storylines which I have no idea where they're going, and if they don't pay off in the last two books, some of these books may well end up being the worst books of the year, rather than just the second worst book of the year. It is just so frustrating. There's a storyline with a group of perpetuals who are people who basically can't die, and it's been dragging on through these books, and it's extended in here, and it just doesn't seem to be going anywhere. Hopefully I'll be proved wrong and it'll be an exceptional finale and I'll be wowed and it'll suddenly move into one of my best series ever. But at the moment, it's just too long. They've just dragged it out and out and out and out, and I don't know whether I care enough. And what you end up with is every book ends well. It ends with a huge climax of action, and then every book starts so slowly, and you always build up and always storyline, and there's just too much of it. There's just too much of it, and it's too long. There's going to be 9 books in the series. They're all decent sized books, and to me it's becoming a money grabbing machine of just writing these books, and they could have condensed it into half the number of books and it would have been probably an exceptional story in 4 or 5 books. But we'll see. If I do the other 2 books this year, if the second one comes out, then we will see whether this remains in the worst books of the year or whether it goes up in the list. But it's hard work. It's hard work at the moment. The third most disappointing book. Now this seems a little bit harsh because this is actually a decent book, but there's some flaws in it that put it down to this list, and that is Far From the Light of Heaven by Tade Thompson. So this book is about the problem with this book, it's got so many good ideas, doesn't explore any of them well enough. So this book is about I've got her name, Campion. Campion is the officer in charge of a spaceship, interstellar ship, that's going to fly for many years. She'll be put into hibernation or stasis or whatever, and she'll fly for many years, and then they'll wake up at destination, and basically it's colonization of other planets. And something goes horribly wrong, and she wakes up. There's been a murder, so you've got effectively a locked room mystery on this spaceship where someone's been killed, but the killer must still be on the spaceship somewhere. So you've got that mystery, and then they've arrived in their place. Someone's been killed. She's trying to figure out who it is. Other people come and help, and the story progresses from there. Now it's got, as I say, it's got a huge amount of ideas. It's got interstellar space travel. It's got colonization, which is probably one of its strongest bits, and I wish it had been explored a lot more, and the oppression of individuals. It's got aliens, which we touch on but we don't really see. It's got artificial intelligence. It's got artificial intelligence in the sense of also parenting artificial intelligence, which is a fascinating idea. It's got so many good ideas, but none of them are explored enough. And to me, it needed to either be a longer book where it explored these ideas, or it needed to have take some of those and put them out and explore some of the ideas that were left in more detail within the pages. It just never gets into enough detail for some of these ideas. You know, the colonization and the oppression of colonists would be a fascinating read. The alien species he introduces is interesting and could be a fascinating exploration. Another flaw of this is there's a relationship that forms that I don't know how it forms, where it forms from. It just appears. There's so many good ideas. It could be such a great book. It just doesn't hit it. It doesn't hit the lines. It tries to cram too much into too small a book, and it doesn't work. And it's disappointing because he's got so many good ideas. So many good ideas. Just put fewer in and you get a better book. Okay, so fourth most disappointing. And this is, to be fair, again, I don't have a physical copy of this one. This one is, I bought it from the library, and it's Glory by NoViolet Bulawayo. To be fair, this one I went in with very high expectations. This book was shortlisted for a Booker, longlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction. NoViolet Bulawayo has been shortlisted for a Booker previously. She is a remarkably talented writer. But this book had some flaws for me that just didn't work. So this is about, it's effectively a story of the 2017 Zimbabwean coup and the aftermath of that coup when Mugabe was evicted from power. And the way NoViolet Bulawayo has chosen to tell it is through a fictional country called Jadada, and the inhabitants of Jadada are animals. So you've got goats, you've got horses, various other animals that live in this society, and that's how the story is told. And I think the biggest problem I had with this book was not the story itself. The story itself is quite fascinating, of what happened in Zimbabwe, or in Jadada in this case. And there's points of storytelling that are really good, and there's one scene in this book especially that will stick with me, and it's there's this brutal scene, and then there's just incredibly touching and moving moment between mother and daughter afterwards, which is incredible. So there's two major parts of this book that don't work for me. One is the use of animals. So the animals in this book don't feel like animals. They feel like people. They feel like people. So I've spent most of this book visualizing them as people, and then suddenly you get this phrasing where they were using their hooves or their horns or whatever, and suddenly you go, oh yeah, they're supposed to be animals. So it didn't work for me. They were always people, and then suddenly I was thrown out, because they're animals. And then I didn't really understand which animals were citizens and which weren't. Where did the line end and start? Or were they all citizens? I'd seen some comparisons to Animal Farm, and it's not. I did my review, and it's not Animal Farm at all. It's a completely different story. The use of animals in Animal Farm is critical to the plot and the story. The use of animals in this book doesn't seem that critical, and it didn't work for me. I think I can understand there's reason for her using the animals, and it probably gave her more freedom to write the story she wanted to write, and not necessarily historical factual book on the Zimbabwean coup. So it maybe she felt that gave her more freedom. I don't know, but it didn't work from my reading of the book. The second thing that in places was ridiculously frustrating was the use of repetition. So there was parts of repetition that worked. Don't get me wrong, there was some use of repetition that really worked. Some around the political propaganda worked. There was other parts that really worked, but there were some parts where the repetition was so excessive, it, I suppose, became laughable. I mean, there was, now I listened to this on audiobook for the majority of it, and there were points where the same phrase was repeated so many times that I could jump forward 15 seconds, another 15 seconds, another 15 seconds, and the narrator was still reading the same words over and over and over again. I imagine on the page, you look at it and it'd be a block of text, or a page or two of text of all the same words, and you'd see it. You wouldn't read every single word. I wouldn't thought you would anyway. You would scan it, oh, okay, that's quite impactful visually, possibly. But from an audio perspective, it was painful. It was painful to listen to. And the narrator, credit to the narrator, they persisted with it, and they did give it different inflections, etc., to engage the listener. But it was too painful for me to listen to it, and I ended up, as I say, skipping through it to try and get to where the story carried on. And there were several points of that, and it was just painful. So this book was disappointing for me. I probably went in with too high expectations, which is why I find it disappointing. But that is Glory by NoViolet Bulawayo. And my fifth most disappointing book is one, again, probably more related to me going with sky high expectations rather than anything else, and that was Dune Messiah. So the second book of the Dune series. I love Dune. I only read it a couple of years ago now. It was an exceptional book. It is an exceptional book. The storyline is fascinating. The way it develops, and the characters involved, and the plot lines, and the action and the adventure. It just all worked for me so well. This book didn't work as well. It was still a reasonable read. I would say the first half, third half, I was really struggling to get into it. It seemed ridiculously slow and I just couldn't engage with what was going on. So it's 12 years after the original Dune, and it's about Paul and basically attempts to overthrow him, his power and his galaxy-spanning religious empire. I suppose what got me as well, Dune felt big. It felt large. We're talking about the planet, we're talking about the Emperor of the Universe, we're talking about, you know, large-scale sci-fi story. This Paul has a massive empire, but it's the background, and it seems like a very small story about Paul and his immediate family. And it wasn't, for me, it didn't engage me. Maybe I went in with the wrong expectations, but it didn't engage me as much as the first one. As I said, the first part just seemed very, very slow to get going. As a whole, it was a fine story. It just didn't live up to Dune, the original. It just didn't touch that for me at all. This is not to say I didn't enjoy this. I did enjoy it, so don't get me wrong. I did enjoy the story. It just wasn't as good as Dune by any stretch of the imagination. And I think I'd put it up on that pedestal. And this is where you get expectations and reality, and that disconnect is what drives disappointment, I suppose. And that, I think, is the case here. I don't think it's a bad book. I don't think it's a bad story. I just think my expectations were way high, and this book was good, but not excellent. And this is why it's on this list. So that's my 5 most disappointing books of the year so far. Let me know in the comments below, what have you found most disappointing? Or have you read any of these books and do you completely disagree with what I'm saying? Maybe some of you agree, maybe not. But I'll be interested to hear your comments. If you enjoyed this video, please do like, subscribe, comment, share, etc. It all helps out the channel. And I will see you all in the next one. Bye.